Friends, a very good afternoon. I'm going to be speaking about the role of cities in India's development. The basic premise that I want to start with is that it's not about cities versus the rest. It is not about towns versus villages. It's not about urban versus rural. But in fact, it is about the bold strokes of development through which we create synergy between the urban and the rural areas. Now, why do I say that cities have a major role to play? I shall talk about it as we go further down in time. But the basic proposition is that about 2/3 of our GDP, the gross domestic product in the Indian economy, is being contributed by the non-agricultural sectors. And hence, since industry and service sectors function in cities, you need cities to host this growth. And hence, we need the kind of cities which can actually sustain the growth which will enable us to increase our income levels as we go down in the years. Now, may I draw your attention to the first graphic here? You have all heard in recent years that India is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. In fact, it is second only to China if you look at the past decade or so. But I have put this graphic here to draw your attention to the overall transition that our economy has made. If you look at the first 3 decades after independence, the first 3 bars, you find that our growth rate was about 3.5% per year in real terms, not taking inflation into account. And then in the 1980s and 1990s, the next 2 bars, these were the decades when we were beginning to move towards market orientation in our policies, and we were able to experience a growth rate of 5.5% per annum. And then came the decade of the 2000s, and you see that we arrived at a growth rate of 7.7% per year on average. On the right-hand side, you see the last decade growth rates stretched out. And what we find there is that after about 3 years of close to 9% or a little over 9% in one of those years, economic growth, when Indian economy was faced with the global financial meltdown, we had a collapse in the growth rate to 6.7% in 2008-9. This was much better performance than most economies where growth actually collapsed, became negative. And what is even more impressive is that after that collapse, we have successfully been able to get back to a path of about 8.5% per annum growth in the last 2 years. However, this does not mean that we can just assume that in the years to come, whatever we do, whatever the government does, the economy will deliver 8 to 9% growth. This means that we have to be on our toes, we have to be competitive, and the expectations are very high. All over the world, international institutions are predicting that India will stay on the growth path of 8, 9, 10% per annum growth in the years to come. And what I'm going to be talking to you about here is what does that entail? First of all, if we are going to grow at these high growth rates, what it means is that let's take the last year, or let's even take 7.7%, the last 10 years average growth. Now, since population growth is about 1.5%, this means that even on a very conservative basis, per capita income is increasing at 6%. In the first 3 decades after independence, when population growth was 2%, our per capita income was increasing at 1.5% per annum. So you are now entering a world in India where your incomes on per capita basis will be increasing at 4 times the pace of what was there when I was in college in the 60s. Now, what does that mean? This means there will be a huge structural transformation in the economy. This growth is being driven by industry and service sectors. Our cities will have to become the engines of growth. They will have to provide an environment, an economic and social environment in which innovation can take place, agglomeration economies can be really exploited. And if that is to happen, what we really need to do to ensure that this supportive infrastructure is there. For a long time, we economists used to talk about physical infrastructure, that you need ports, you need airports, you need telecommunications in order to have high growth rates. But now that we are growing at 8 to 9% per annum, even skills have become a constraint. We need to develop skills. We need to have higher education, especially since we have a very high proportion of our working age population which is young, people like you. And if we do not endow them with knowledge-based education skills, we will end up having a demographic disaster rather than a demographic dividend. So let's turn to the next graphic. Today, India's population is about, India's urban population in cities is about 30% of our total population, which is much smaller than most other countries. But this is because we have really had a growth rate in the past which has been very low. We have had employment generation in the industrial sector which has been very low. But if you turn to the next graphic, you will see that only about 20% of the urban population is contributed by rural-urban migration. Most of it is through natural increase in population. Now, if you are going to have a major structural transformation in the economy, and if industry and service sectors led by the private sector are going to bear the major burden of this growth, then you expect to see that 20% becoming much larger. So we are going to really see a much greater increase in our urban population. And as the graphic puts it, the deluge is yet to come. And the next slide shows you that today we have 50 metropolitan cities. That means cities with population of 1 million and above. And there are forecasts that show that by 2031, this number will increase to 87. The question is, are we ready? Now, if we move to the next graphic, as I mentioned earlier, by right now in 2009-10, about 2/3 of our GDP is being produced by industry and services sectors. The midterm appraisal of the 11th plan forecasts that this ratio is going to be 3/4 in 20 years. So as that happens, as there is more migration from rural areas to urban areas, would we still be able to say that India lives in its villages? No. We, in fact, will come to a situation where the survival and rejuvenation of the rural areas is also highly dependent on what kind of urban strategy we have. an urban strategy which links villages to small towns, to middle towns, to large towns, to metropolitan towns, mega cities. We have to work on the continuum. We should stop thinking about the rural-urban divide, but really think about how to bring the two economies together. And that's basically, let's have the next graphic. What you find here are the states of India with their per capita income and their level of urbanization, percentage of population that is urban. And you can see that the higher per capita income is typically associated with a higher level of urbanization. So now that we are through with the graphics, let us just put that one slide of what is the challenge. Cities and towns of India are visibly deficient in the quality of services they provide. I don't have to say any more to this audience. We live through the state of pathetic public service delivery in our cities. And we, on the other hand, everything that I've told you earlier shows that we need to make cities which can host the growth that we very proudly proclaim we are capable of. And it is, in response, it is not just about creating urban infrastructure. It's not enough to say, we don't have urban roads, let's build a road. We don't have sewerage, let's put a sewerage line here. That will not improve the service delivery. If we want our sewerage to function, if we want our roads to be maintained and operated properly, if we want water 24/7 in all cities of India, then what we need is not just the infrastructure, but systems of governance which actually allow us to improve the standards of service delivery. I have recently submitted a report as chair of a committee which was set up by the Government of India on the state of urban infrastructure and service delivery. And the long and short of this very detailed report is that we need investments. In fact, our committee said that we need investments of about 40 lakh crore at today's prices over a 20-year period to bridge all the infrastructure deficit that is there in urban areas. But if we have to meet the standards of service delivery which have been laid out by the Ministry of Urban Development in 2008, for example, for water, they have said we should have water round the clock delivered through pipes all over India. So if that has to be maintained, the committee has said that this should be universal. The standards cannot be applied to some cities, some areas. They should be universal, including the slums, who will be given 24/7 water delivery, sewerage, stormwater drains, because we believe that if you do not have water and sanitation, if you do not have public transport and affordable housing for low-income people, then you cannot really assure basic public health in the cities. And if you cannot assure that, you cannot realize the dream of being a competitive economy in the world which will attract investment from the private sector domestically as well as internationally. And we feel that Government of India has to play a role. State governments, which have the principal responsibility for urban development assigned to them by the Constitution, have to play a role. And most important, after the 74th Amendment of the Constitution in 1995, which assigned the responsibility for the basic core urban services to municipalities and municipal corporations, we now have to make sure that Government of India and state governments actually transfer funding to the third tier in a predictable, guaranteed way, so that these mandates of the Constitution can be funded properly as these municipalities become accountable to deliver these services. It's extremely important to empower the communities, and it's not even going to require too much effort on the part of the government, because as more and more education spreads, as we have growing middle classes, that empowerment and expectation for good public service delivery in the cities of India is to be expected. We will not have it any other way. And it is better that the municipal corporations and municipalities are directly made accountable. They are given funding which is assured, and then we demand from them standards of financial probity, of governance, of addressing grievances. And it is really when this very basic governance mechanism is put in place that we can be sure that we will have cities which will enable us not only to generate growth in industry and services sectors, but link that growth to rural areas through market connectivity and through investment in logistics, for example, so that we have increasing food demands. But in order to meet these food demands, we have investment in refrigeration, investment in communication, in modern retail. As more and more women join the labor force, you get the kind of food economy that you see in more developed economies. And the last word, I have not spoken about slums, but the report has a major section on slums, and our main recommendation, which I believe very strongly in, is that you cannot plan for the poor in an isolated manner. You have to integrate the planning for a city in which there must be provision for the poor, for the low-income people, public transport, private transport. Unless you do that, right now we have a separate ministry that looks after slums and a ministry that looks after urban development. We believe that you need to look in an integrated manner, connect spatial planning, physical planning with socio-economic planning that we hear a lot of, so that you really have an integrated, planned manner in which you improve governance and build cities that we can be proud of. Thank you very much.